Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
I can't tell you how often I hear, oh, I'm a little OCD. I like things neat. That's not OCD. I'm Howie Mandel, and I know this because I have OCD. Actual OCD causes relentless, unwanted thoughts. What if I did something terrible and forgot? What if I'm a bad person? Why am I thinking this terrible thing? It makes you question absolutely everything, and you'll do anything to feel better. OCD is debilitating, but it's also highly treatable with the right kind of therapy. Regular talk therapy doesn't cut it. OCD needs specialized therapy. That's why I want to tell you about NoCD. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for OCD. Their licensed therapists provide specialized therapy virtually, and it's covered by insurance for over 155 million Americans. If you think you might be struggling with OCD, visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call and learn more. That's nocd.com.
At least throw a Golden Gay Time and a Chico roll in there or something. Mix it up.
Eavesdroppin.
Oh, Michelle, you caught me off guard.
Did I? How is that even possible?
It looked like you were swatting a fly there, and I thought, oh, I'm behind. That's just behind the scenes talk there. What we do behind the scenes, isn't it, on this podcast?
But that's what happens when you're eavesdropping.
Yes, that's right. People catch you off guard.
What did I say in an earlier podcast? Verbal diarrhea. Verbal diarrhea. If you can't say diarrhea at the beginning of a podcast, when can you say it?
Absolutely. By the way, just in case you've just joined us, I'm Geordie.
And I'm Michelle. This is Eavesdroppin', the comedy podcast.
It's comedy, don't you know? Ha ha! You wouldn't know it from last week's episode. Oof, that was a rough ride. Bad cults.
I'm telling you, this week, it's rough again.
Oh, no.
Strap in.
Sorry, guys. Those of you who enjoy a bit of true crime, I'm going to make a really bad metaphor here, but you can't make a murder omelette without cracking some crime eggs.
That's right.
Some gore and some rough stuff.
Some rough stuff. I was going to say, once something's fucked, you can't unfuck it.
Oh, I like that. No, you can never go back. It's true.
No, you can't. When you listen to a true crime podcast, you got to expect some crime. That's why you got to be careful what you listen to.
Right. So we will give trigger warnings.
Yes, I will give lots of triggers, but we are very happy that you have tuned in. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining us. Settle down, pour yourself a tall glass of Toughen Up, and brace yourself, Mavis, because here we are to give you the true crime. It's Hometown Murders Week, isn't it, Michelle?
Yeah, but I got to tell you, I've only got a little snippety bippet that is really about my hometown, but it does connect.
Where is your hometown, Michelle, for those who don't know?
Well,
you can lay claim to many places, can't you, really?
Yes, I would say my hometown is where I grew up, in the nation's capital of Canberra, bush capital, for anyone who doesn't know that.
Australia being the nation.
I did put the accent on then, so if you didn't realise, that's what it was.
Some people might have thought you were from...
Queensland.
Somewhere else. Botswana.
Botswana?
I don't know.
Oh my God. Where's your hometown?
My hometown, this is a tough one. I was born in Sydney. I was raised on the southeast coast of New South Wales. And then I left Australia as a teenager and moved to London. So I'd like to say that I'm a Londoner. I've lived here for more than half my life. South London most of the time. But the south coast would be a hometown of New South Wales in Australia.
I mean, look, I would say if I was going to do a hometown murder of where I am right now, I wouldn't really do a murder. I'm in Zermatt. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of dead bodies in this town.
Really coming up under the snow.
Well, no, people getting lost on the mountain and dying.
Oh, God.
Because they didn't take enough warm clothes or food, or they got caught in a whiteout, all those sorts of things.
That's terrible, because people go there for their holidays, Michelle. They go there to have a nice walk or a lovely ski. When we were there recently with you, there was all the helicopters with people dangling and spinning.
How
awful. I wouldn't pay for that.
You've got to be careful. And honestly, you do fucking pay. If you have to get helied off this mountain and you don't have insurance, oh my God, you may as well be dead.
Well, we saw that woman, didn't we, being strapped in saying, I'm really okay. I think I'll be fine now. I can take it from here. And they were strapping her into the helicopter. She's like, I'm fine.
Yeah, she probably had like 2 broken legs and couldn't move, but I can't afford the bill. Now, listeners, I do have some news. It's a little bit of a warning in case you're listening, you're running along, and then all of a sudden an ad pops in.
Oh, we've got ads.
Well, maybe. We've been accepted into the ad program, and I actually don't know how it works yet.
Or what it means.
Or God knows if there's going to be bloody dog food, because you talk about dog walking. Maybe that's what's going to happen here, but they might put something in our mid-roll, is what they say. So just brace yourself, Mavises and Malcolms out there. We might have ads.
Okay, good to know. So you'll be fast-forwarding quite a lot of this episode then in that case. You'll be fast-forwarding the ads, you'll be fast-forwarding all the gore.
Yes, really. And speaking of gore, look, Geordie, I've just got to get straight into it because there's a lot. Like I said, I know this was meant to be a hometown murder, but I did come across this shocking Aussie true crime case. It's not a Canberra case, but there is a slight Canberra connection. So that's where we're going this week.
All right.
And by the way, gorgeous Canberra listeners, if you have a local murder you want me to look into, do write in.
She has a subscription to the dark web, so she can always find all the facts. Just
sometimes. And sometimes you don't want them. In the meantime, this case, Geordie, it is wild in the worst possible way.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it starts with the discovery of an unknown woman's bones found in bushland south of Sydney.
Oh, well, this is already feeling like, what's his name? It's always Ivan Milat, isn't it?
Oh, well, he gets an honourable mention here.
I bet he does.
Maybe I should just trigger warning this whole story because it is grim, but I will give you a little trigger before it gets really, really grim. But yes, trigger warning for those who need it. It's August 2010 in the Belanglo State Forest, New South Wales.
Oh, that's where they found all those bodies of Ivan Milats.
Exactly. Anyone who knows their serial killers knows that Belanglo has a grim reputation.
The Wolf Creek guy
is a stomping ground for the backpacker serial killer Ivan Milat. And for most Aussies, that name does send a chill down your spine.
Yeah.
It's August, and 2 dirt bike riders are biking through Belanglo when they go off track at some point and they see something weird under a thin layer of pine needles. So they get off their bikes, they take a closer look, they find a skull first.
Oh no.
Then bones, then a sock, an earring, and a decomposed t-shirt with the word angelic written on it.
Oh, no.
There's no ID, nothing else. The dirt bike dudes immediately called it in to the police. And the police get out there, they look at the bones, and they are just stumped. They're like, who is this woman? Forensics work through the bones, and they conclude it is a young female, slim build, around 20 years of age. The cause of death is unclear as there's no gunshot wounds, there's no obvious signs of trauma, but it's definitely not natural causes. Also, because the bones had been chomped away at by wildlife and were so badly damaged, forensics eventually came to the conclusion that the bones had been lying in the forest for up to 12 years.
Oh, no. When was this that it happened? 2010 they found the bones?
Yes.
Oh, so early 2000s.
No, 98, if it's 12 years.
Late 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, my maths is a bit appalling.
That's all right. So police start to go through their files and they realise there's no missing person reports that match what the forensics have told them. To be honest, there's not much else to go on at all. And because of her T-shirt, the police end up calling this unknown Jane Doe the Angel of Belanglo. And of course, once the media got hold of this story, they absolutely run with it because it's a great headline, the Angel of Belanglo. But who is this girl? And of course, because she was found in Belanglo, the first thing people thought, like you, was, is she another one of Ivan Milat's victims?
Yeah.
But if forensics were right about the bones being there for more than a decade, police quickly realised that the time frame...
He was in prison.
Yeah, exactly. He was put away in 94 and he's serving 7 life sentences. So Ivan Milat, he was off the hook for this.
Right. But his family were quite bad as well, weren't they?
Oh, I think they were shockers. Yep.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Don't forget that.
Don't come for us. Oh my God. Milats, they're very nice people, I hear. Invite you in for a cuppa.
Don't.
The police were there thinking, okay, if it's not Ivan Milat, who the hell is it? Did she fall in with the wrong crowd? Was she involved in something she shouldn't have been? Did she know something that she shouldn't have known? They just were trying to wrap their head around how she ended up in the Belanglo State Forest, dumped there by someone who couldn't even be bothered to try and bury her or hide the body because it was just this thin covering of pine needles, which had obviously just blown over her body over the years. With all the media coverage in Australia, because it went national, no one came forward with any info about whose bones these might be. You know, the case died down in the media and the bones remained in a Sydney morgue for years as just another Jane Doe cold case. And it seemed that that's how it was going to stay until 5 years later, on July 15th, 2015, a grim discovery was made in a remote town called Wanaka in South Australia. Buckle up, because this is really awful.
Oh, God.
Wanaka is in the middle of nowhere, about 130 kilometres southeast of Adelaide. Running through the area of Wanaka is the Karoonta Highway. On July 15, 2015, just a dude stopped his car on the side of the road to get out and take a piss. As he was standing there, he saw this beaten up, old-looking black suitcase just dumped on the side of the road like it was a piece of rubbish.
Oh, no. I always think that when I see a rubbish bag on the side of the road, though. I know where you're going with this because that's what I always think.
Well, that's it. I don't know what I would do if I found a dodgy-looking... Kittens!
Kittens in a bag. I worry that it's kittens in a bag.
Yeah, well, that's what my dad used to always say he was going to do with our cat because she was always getting pregnant. We had so many cats and so many kittens. And he's like, I'm going to put them in a bag. And we were always like, no, Dad.
That's awful.
No, he never did. He never did. But we were the crazy cat family. Yes, kittens in a bag, horrible. Dodgy looking suitcase,
even worse.
My mind would go dark.
Yeah.
Because we've been doing this podcast, Geordie, for years.
Yeah.
And everything inside me would be screaming, do not open that fucking suitcase.
Call the cops.
This guy, though.
He opened it, unzipped.
He opened it, zipped it open, took a look inside. And, trigger warning here, what he found was a handmade patchwork quilt, a Dora the Explorer t-shirt,
No.
pink children's tracksuit pants,
No.
blue teddy bear pajamas,
Oh, no.
and the complete skeleton of a young child.
Oh,
A black party dress was also found near the suitcase.
fuck that.
Yeah, I know. And I imagine the guy was completely freaked out by this. He immediately called the police and everyone was disturbed by this.
Yeah.
Because who the fuck was this little girl? Where was her family? And how did she end up dead in a suitcase and tossed onto the side of the road? So police made appeals to the public, going to the media with some of the things that were in the suitcase, along with the toddler's remains, including a picture of a pink dress and the handmade quilt. And the appeal went all over Australia on the news. A woman called Tanya Webber in the Northern Territory saw the news piece on telly one night, and something about that pink dress just really rattled her. She could not shake the feeling she'd seen that pink dress before, and then it hit her. She'd seen her best friend's granddaughter, Khandalyce Pearce, running around her living room in Alice Springs wearing that same dress 7 years earlier.
Oh, God.
And she thought, oh, God, could that toddler in the suitcase be Khandalyce? So Tanya called Crime Stoppers, which is an Australian hotline where you can ring in tips to the police.
I think we've got that in the UK as well.
Oh, do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Right. Well, Tanya was caller 1267, and after months with no answers and no leads, detectives finally had their breakthrough when they followed up on Tanya's suspicions. So now the police had a name, Khandalyce Pearce, but they had to do their due diligence. So they trawled through medical records, ruling out dozens of other missing children before finally confirming the bones as belonging to Khandalyce.
Just that whole sentence is so devastating, isn't it, Michelle? Having to trawl through the dozens of missing children reports.
It's horrible. It is absolutely heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
This investigation didn't end with Khandalyce's identity because someone is this child's mother.
Yeah. Why wasn't she reported missing?
Exactly. So police then began to suspect that as no one had come forward, maybe Khandalyce's mother was dead also. Yeah. Somehow, someone put two and two together and connected the bones from the Angel of Belanglo as a possible tie to the bones found in the suitcase. When the police had gone through medical records to identify Khandalyce, they'd uncovered neonatal heel prick results. Have you ever had that done with your kids?
Yeah, all of them.
So this led to Khandalyce's identification, but they also used the DNA from that heel prick test against the bones from the Angel of Belanglo, and it was a match.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I've got a quick question here, Michelle, and I don't want to ruin your story, but how come it took the friend of the grandmother to put two and two together? Where's Gran?
This will all be revealed.
Okay.
Hold your horses, Nelly. Because this fucking story, it's so twisty-turny and so crazy. So look, now the police have two names. They know that the Angel of Belanglo is 20-year-old mother, Karlie Pearce Stevenson, and her 2-year-old daughter, Khandalyce Pearce, in the suitcase. And it turns out that Karlie Pearce Stevenson had been in that forest in New South Wales since late 2008.
Oh.
And Khandalyce had been in the suitcase in a whole different state, more than 1,000 kilometres away.
That's a long way.
And more than 12 hours driving distance since late 2008.
Same year? Was that the same year? Sorry, I forgot the first number.
Yeah, since 2008.
I can't hold numbers in my head.
Did I get it wrong with the forensics? Because I think the forensics
they
had
did.
misidentified how long they thought the bones had been there.
It also could have been the fact that Karlie wasn't buried. She was just left. We know this from other stories that we've told in the past, but she would have decomposed a lot quicker out in the open.
Completely in the elements. So once the police had identified the bodies, it pretty much led them directly to Karlie's boyfriend at the time, a guy called Daniel Holdom. But before we turn to Daniel, I want to rewind a bit to talk about the murdered mother and daughter. Yeah. So Karlie Jade Pearce Stevenson was born in 1988 in the town of Alice Springs. It's in the Northern Territory for anyone who doesn't know Australian geography. It's kind of in the middle of Australia. And in 1988, it had a population of around 150,000 people. So it is a bit of a hub for that part of the country. And Karlie was apparently known as a warm, cheeky, full of life kind of girl who was, according to friends, loyal and bubbly. But she also wanted something more from life. And she was looking for something bigger than Alice Springs. Karlie had Khandalyce in 2006 when Karlie was still practically a teenager herself. By all accounts, she loved that little girl and was an excellent mum. Although Karlie did have her struggles. As a young mum, she did find life tough. She was on welfare. She had a bit of a rough time, but she was determined to be a good mum to Khandalyce. And she had a lot of love and support from her family. And then she met Daniel James Holdom. In late 2007, Daniel, who was 34, so quite a bit older than Karlie, he had just moved to Alice Springs with his then-girlfriend, Hazel Passmore, and her 3 children. In 2008, when Karlie was 20, she met Daniel through mutual friends, and they were just mates at first. He was dodgy as fuck and had been in and out of prison for most of his life for things like ripping off the Australian Tax Department, welfare fraud. He was also a small-time drug dealer, and because of this, he was kind of cashed up. And from all accounts, he was a bit of a charmer and a bit of a master manipulator. Daniel was also the one that got Karlie into hard drugs.
Oh.
Things did go a bit south for Karlie at that point, but they were still just druggy mates because Daniel was with Hazel. Daniel and Hazel had met in Queensland in 2004, and according to reports, they had this real hold over each other in a very unhealthy way. When Daniel went to jail for a year after Hazel and he first got together in 2004, she stuck by him. And when he got out, she took her kids, because she had kids, and moved from Queensland to New South Wales to be with him. And apparently they were both kind of drifters. They were just jobbing around, going up and down the East Coast, living a bit of a transient lifestyle until they ran out of cash. And according to reports, they had a volatile relationship, but they both were into the same sexual kink. I don't know too much about this,
Right.
but it was one of the things that kept them together through their fights and chaos.
And that's all you know.
That's all I know, but I have some ideas about what that kink might have been. Keep listening.
All right.
Then they moved to Alice Springs in 2007, and in September 2008, Daniel caused a car crash that killed 2 of Hazel's 3 children
Oh, no.
and also seriously injured Hazel.
Oh, God.
She was in a coma for 2 weeks, and in the end, she had one of her legs amputated.
Oh, no.
Meanwhile, Daniel, while all this was going on, turned to Karlie for support and then left Hazel for Karlie, who
Oh.
was 14 years younger.
God.
So it's not clear whether Hazel knew Daniel had gone off with another woman because she was in hospital.
For sure. And grieving.
But what she did know was that he bailed on her out of the relationship, and she felt really betrayed because he killed 2 of her kids
Yeah.
and she lost a leg, and then he left her.
When you say he caused the car accident, what was that about? Did he do it on purpose?
No, he was driving, and obviously maybe he was on drugs. I don't know.
Oh, I see. But he was responsible.
He was responsible.
Right.
Karlie, meanwhile, was like, great, she's dating her drug dealer. And I think she kind of saw Daniel as a way out of Alice. They both decided to pick up and leave and move to Adelaide together. And Karlie spoke to her mum about her plans. None of her friends or family liked Daniel, and they definitely did not want Karlie leaving town with him. But she was determined, and when her mum realised this, she said, listen, I'll take care of Khandalyce. You just go. But Karlie was not having any of it, and
Right.
she and Khandalyce left Alice Springs with Daniel sometime around November 2008.
Oh.
Now, on their way down to Adelaide in 2008, Karlie, Khandalyce and Daniel visited Karlie's grandmother in Port Augusta. Is that how you say it? Port Augusta?
Augusta?
Port Augusta. Augusta? I don't know. Augusta?
You're so foreign. You're so
foreign.
continental. Augusta. I think in Australia they would probably just say Augusta.
Port Augusta.
Kamagatsa.
Cool. I don't know. Anyway.
That's what my dad says, and I don't know what it means. I think it means you've fallen over.
All right.
Oh, he's Kamagatsa.
Come a cropper is what I think.
No, he says Gatsa.
Gatsa, okay.
Kamagatsa.
Your dad's a character. So after they went to Port Augusta, they also went to Canberra.
Oh, that's your connection.
Where they visited Daniel's cousin, Christine, and her husband, Derek, in Charnwood, also known colloquially as Charnie.
I used to live in Charnwood. That was the first place
No.
I moved to in Canberra. When I left home, I was lodging with a lady and her family and going to the newly opened Lake Ginninderra College.
It wasn't Christine and Derek, was it?
I don't know. I can't remember her name. No.
Well, look, according to statements from Christine and Derek to police, they said that Karlie and Daniel had had an argument one night at their house in Charnwood and that the pair had left in her car. The next morning, Daniel went back to Charnwood without Karlie, saying he dropped her at a hotel.
Oh.
Daniel had a scratch on his face, and Derek said he didn't know how that scratch got there.
Right.
Then Derek says Daniel asked him, go trade Karlie's car in for me and get me another car, which Derek says he did.
Oh, no questions asked. Bit weird.
He's trading in Karlie's car. It's not even Daniel's car.
And these are Karlie's family or they're his family?
His family, his
Right.
cousin. A few days later, he then told Derek and Christine that he was going to Adelaide to drop Khandalyce at her grandmother's house.
Oh, God.
what really happened, Geordie, was a horror show. So please,
Yeah. Okay, this is
trigger
where
warning.
the triggers come in.
Trigger warning. Trigger warning. Trigger warning.
If you don't want to hear this next bit, skip forward maybe 10, 15 minutes to
Can I
your
take my
story.
headphones off so I just see your... Can I just see your mouth moving and not listen to this bit, please?
Yes, you can. I'll gesticulate instead.
Oh, God.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
I can't tell you how often I hear, oh, I'm a little OCD. I like things neat. That's not OCD. I'm Howie Mandel, and I know this because I have OCD. Actual OCD causes relentless, unwanted thoughts. What if I did something terrible and forgot? What if I'm a bad person? Why am I thinking this terrible thing? It makes you question absolutely everything, and you'll do anything to feel better. OCD is debilitating, but it's also highly treatable with the right kind of therapy. Regular talk therapy doesn't cut it. OCD needs specialized therapy. That's why I want to tell you about NoCD. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for OCD. Their licensed therapists provide specialized therapy virtually, and it's covered by insurance for over 155 million Americans. If you think you might be struggling with OCD, visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call and learn more. That's nocd.com.
Now look, trigger, here it is. According to statements, Daniel took Karlie to Belanglo State Forest sometime between December 14 and December 15 in 2008, where he sexually assaulted her with a bottle before stomping on her throat and crushing her windpipe.
God.
He then took trophy photos of Karlie's dead body and then left her in the forest without even burying her.
He just left her.
Days later, sometime between December 19 and December 20, near Wagga in New South Wales,
Oh, no.
Daniel sexually assaulted Khandalyce before suffocating her
Oh, fucking hell.
and stuffing her in that suitcase. Now, the fact that Khandalyce was murdered near Wagga came about because homicide detectives wanted to figure out the location of her kill.
Of her kill?
He killed her. They wanted to figure out the location of her murder.
Of her death?
They retraced Daniel's trip from Canberra to Adelaide via Wagga Wagga using phone records and bank records.
Right.
Through these, they discovered that Daniel had paid for a night at a motel in Narrandera. So the detectives went
Narrandera.
there. Is that how you say it?
My family are from around there, yes. That's their hometown. My parents' hometown.
I've never heard of this town, so I was like, Narrandera.
It's Narrandera, yeah. That's all in the Riverina.
Okay. Detectives went there 8 years after the fact, hoping to find a receipt or some kind of check-in information, but the hotel had changed hands and the new owners didn't have any of those old records. But the detectives managed to track down the previous owner, who spent a week digging through old paperwork before finding a handwritten registration note from December 2018.
Oh, my God.
On it, Daniel had written his name and address and that he was checking in with one child. And that was the last known moment that Khandalyce was alive.
Oh, God.
And I'm sorry that was so grim. We know that Karlie and Khandalyce are dead at this point. But Karlie's family had no idea. And now, to go back to your point earlier,
Yeah.
although Karlie's family didn't like Daniel and hated the fact that she'd gone off with him to travel and potentially work, they just thought she was out there with him, living her life. So there weren't any suspicions at that point.
So no phone call or...
Well, look, she hadn't been in regular contact with them since leaving Alice Springs. There'd been a few phone calls, but they weren't particularly concerned. And it was only really a couple of weeks after. Although in November 2008, Karlie had sent a few texts, some updates, nothing too much, but then silence for weeks and then months. And then skip forward to almost a year later, in September 2009, Karlie's mum, Colleen, decides, I've had enough of this, and she lodges a missing persons report. But not long after reporting Karlie as missing, she withdraws that missing persons report because she starts getting texts from Karlie saying things like, we're fine, Mum, or I just need a bit of space.
Right.
I'm not interested in coming back to the family. Just give me my space.
Right.
Meanwhile, right after Daniel murdered Karlie and Khandalyce, he goes back to Hazel to try and make the relationship work again.
Oh, my God. So he goes back to Alice.
Yes, but I think they leave Alice. Hazel, she's just got out of hospital at this point. She's in a wheelchair with one leg. She's feeling shit about herself, shit about her life. She's, only got one child instead of 3. She just wants a little feeling of her old life back. So she takes him back. Then one day, and I think they have left Alice at this point, she finds Karlie's pension card and Medicare card in Daniel's car, along with Khandalyce's birth certificate. And she's like, what the fuck is this? Are you having a secret relationship with someone? And he's like, no, I'm not. And this is a quote from a Daily Mail article I read. Hazel says, quote, I was yelling and screaming, what the fuck is this shit? I was going off my nut and he pulled me inside, literally by the scruff of the neck. He threw the chair, he starts shaking me, and he's like, she's disappeared, she's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean she's gone? And he's like, she's dead, she's dead.
So he admitted it to her.
Hazel stays with him.
What?
And the pair start draining Karlie's bank accounts of cash.
Oh, my God.
And worse than that, they keep claiming her Centrelink welfare payments, and they're texting Karlie's family.
No.
Yep.
So she's in on this as well.
Now, police discovered a woman in a wheelchair impersonating Karlie went to the Australian Central Credit Union Bank to update banking records. And in December 2010, a woman pretending to be Karlie went to a compulsory interview at Centrelink in South Australia.
Right.
With identity
yes, 'cause
documents.
You've got to keep meeting up. So they keep you on these welfare payments, I
Well,
suppose.
she got away with it.
Wow.
And the pair kept using her credit card. Police found
God.
they'd used that credit card in Deakin and Kipax at ATMs.
So they're both places in Canberra.
That's right, yes. And the last transaction made on Karlie's card was in March 2012 in Charnwood. Apparently, more than 90,000 Australian dollars had been collected by the pair from Karlie's accounts, her credit cards, Centrelink payments. They'd also committed tax fraud in her name as well. And like I said, they used Karlie's phone to send texts to family and friends, making them all believe that Karlie was still alive, just didn't want to have anything to do with them. A woman even impersonated Karlie to trick her mother into sending money so Karlie could fix her car.
Oh,
it's heartbreaking.
God.
When police finally identified the bodies of Karlie and Khandalyce and put 2 and 2 together to find Daniel, it wasn't hard to find him because he was in jail already for sexually assaulting an 8-year-old girl in a caravan park in New South Wales.
Oh, no.
And
no.
I know. And in 2015, Daniel was charged with Karlie and Khandalyce's murders. Key to getting Daniel convicted was the testimony of Hazel. But that was a tricky thing too.
Right, because she's complicit.
Exactly. And she was interviewed twice. Now, the second interview was what is called an induced statement, which apparently means any info she gave to the police could not be used in evidence against her and could not be used to build a case against her.
Right.
So, despite initially standing by him, which she said at that stage of the police interview, she did it out of fear. I don't know about that, but that's my opinion. She then helped police convict Daniel with a string of confessions. It was Hazel that told police that Daniel had confessed to her that he'd sexually assaulted Karlie and killed her, that he'd sexually assaulted Khandalyce before suffocating her to death and putting her in that suitcase. She also said Daniel had often asked her to share details of her own experiences of sexual assault as a child.
Oh my
And she
God.
said his confessions to her were not surprising because over the course of their relationship, Daniel had expressed interest in child abuse material. Police also apparently found a notebook belonging to Daniel in which he had written a list of children's names and the words consent and forced next to them.
Oh my God.
And Hazel must have known all about that. Hazel also said in 2010 she found an SD card.
What's that? Oh, cameras.
It's like a camera
Digital
card.
camera, yeah.
Digital card that used to go into cameras. And that's where she saw pictures of Karlie and Khandalyce's murders that Daniel had taken. And she said that was the reason she pretended to be Karlie, because she felt fearful and she didn't want to raise suspicion. She was just scared. So on the 31st of July 2018, Daniel Holden pleaded guilty to the murders and was sentenced in the New South Wales Supreme Court to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole ever. Thing is, while he pleaded guilty to the murders, he never really explained why he did it. He apparently told Hazel he did it for her so they could get back together. And I read in a great article that I'll link to on the Patreon that Daniel told a prison psychologist he murdered Karlie because she had said something not particularly nice about his relationship with Hazel.
Right.
He also said he killed Khandalyce because it would have raised suspicion if he'd turned up in South Australia with Khandalyce but without Karlie. And during the trial, the prosecution suggested a few different motives, including financial gain, which is possible because we know he accessed her bank accounts and drained everything that Karlie had. The prosecution also suggested he did it for sexual gratification because clearly the guy is a pedophile and maybe he killed Karlie to get access to Khandalyce. But we will never really know why he did it. But if there is any kind of upshot to this really fucking grim case, it's that Karlie and Khandalyce were both found and eventually identified, and finally their families can lay their loved ones to rest.
Yeah. That is just out of this world, Michelle.
Sorry.
It's really rough, and that's 2 weeks in a row we've had rough stories.
I know, we have to do something nice next week. We have to do something light.
Oh, God.
Wake up every morning to a hometown murder, 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 hometown murder.
This is Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. Opill is a game changer for sexual reproductive health. They're the first over-the-counter daily birth control pill available in the U.S. Finally, the days of needing a prescription to get birth control are over. Opill is FDA approved, no prescription needed, full prescription strength, estrogen-free, and available online and at most major retailers. So when there's no prescription, no appointment, there's no hassle. No more waiting at the doctor's office to get a prescription. Opill will be easily accessed over the counter, in store, or online, and will be ready for when you need it. Opill is available online and at most major retailers. Use code GIGGLY for 25% off your first month of Opill at opill.com.
What if I told you that right now, millions of people are living with a debilitating condition that's so misunderstood, many of them don't even know that they have it? That condition is obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. I'm Dr. Patrick McGrath, the Chief Clinical Officer of NoCD. And in the 25 years I've been treating OCD, I've met so many people who are suffering from the condition in silence, unaware of just what it was. OCD can create overwhelming anxiety and fear around what you value most, make you question your identity, beliefs, and morals, and drive you to perform mentally and physically draining compulsions or rituals. Over my career, I've seen just how devastating OCD can be when it's left untreated. But help is available. That's where NoCD comes in. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for obsessive compulsive disorder. Our licensed therapists are trained in exposure and response prevention therapy, a specialized treatment proven to be incredibly effective for OCD. So visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call with our team. That's nocd.com.
Well, actually, going on that theme of Australian murders and hometowns, it's starting to build a bit of a picture of Australia as a bit of a scary place to be. And I often think that when I go back, and occasionally I do have flashbacks of that film.
Black Rock.
No. I don't know what that is. Black Rock.
Oh my God, the most fucking terrifying film, Australian
I've
film.
never seen it.
Don't. It is so awful. It's really awful. It's murdery and scary.
Oh, God. It sounds a bit like this episode.
Yeah, it is.
No, I meant the Bush Pig one. What's it called again? John Jarrett playing a version of Malat.
Oh my God. Yes, you said it earlier.
I said it earlier.
Don't remember.
Oh, God. What's it called?
This is that middle-aged lady moment.
Look, it doesn't matter. We're moving ahead. It's very frustrating for our listeners, if you're still with us after all this grim and gore. Thanks to Safka, who loves a documentary and listened to a different podcast because she was waiting for our episodes to come back every week. She filled her time by listening to something called Dear Rachelle, which is currently #1 in the British podcasts. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there's a slight link. It's also in Australia, but it's kind of a hometown murder for me because it is, well, I'll tell you in a minute. It occurred after I left Australia and it's in 2001. So I don't remember it, but this podcast is very similar to Teacher's Pet. And I know that you've listened to a few episodes, Michelle. And actually, as of recording right now, it hasn't finished. I think I'm about 2 episodes away from being done with it. But it is gathering momentum. The family are working with the podcasters. And it's on its way to being a very similar situation to Teacher's Pet, where they actually caught the killer of Lynette Dawson, a woman who disappeared. And it was her husband, Chris Dawson, who is now doing time for her murder, thanks to a podcast.
On that theme, Teacher's Pet was by a guy called Hedley Thomas. And for anyone who, like me, is late to the party and didn't listen to his more recent podcast, it's called Bronwyn.
Oh.
It came out last year, in June last year. I thought it was going to be sort of 10 episodes. There's 39 bloody episodes, and they're all an hour long. But Hedley is going to nail that guy, I tell you. I haven't got... Maybe he does in episode 39. I don't know.
Right. So there's more going on of podcasts being responsible for catching killers and opening cold cases and things like that. Well, like yours, Michelle, it's a very sad story and tragic story. I'm going to go back to the early hours of Friday the 8th of July 2001 when security worker Craig Duck saw a fire in scrub on the beach side of Crooked River Road, aka Gerroa Road, near the town of Gerroa, which is where the stunning 7 Mile beach is. And I'm claiming this as my hometown because it's just down the road from where my biological father lives. I'm not going to give his address or anything, but suffice to say, he lives nearby. Craig stumbled across the partially burned body of 23-year-old Rachelle Childs in a shallow ditch and immediately called it in. Rachelle Childs was a vivacious young woman into car racing and worked at a Holden dealership in Camden, New South Wales, which was about an hour southwest of Sydney. She lived about 40 minutes away from Camden in Bargo, which is a small town where there's not much going on. On the night of Thursday, June 7th, 2001, Rachelle left work at the car dealership and was planning to go home. The police believe that she got changed at home and then headed to the Bargo hotel, but she never made it. In fact, her body was found nearly 100 miles from where she was last seen. Her car was later found in the pub car park at Bargo, abandoned. Family and friends, who Rachelle was really close to and always kept in the loop about her comings and goings, had no idea who it was that Rachelle went to meet that night, and that in itself was unusual. Investigators at the scene of Rachelle's murder reported that Rachelle was, and here's a trigger warning, I'm going to describe the scene. Rachelle was naked from the waist down, curled in the fetal position. Her phone, her handbag and a bed sheet were later found dumped in and around the nearby area. And evidence suggests that the killer may have originally tried to dump her body beneath a water tank, which is down the beach track, not far from the main road. But the lid was too heavy and may have prompted the killer to burn her body nearby using an accelerant such as petrol. There are a lot of theories about this horrific murder. And there were a few men in Rachelle's life, which, because of her love of cars and racing, it made her popular with the fellas. And it didn't hurt that she was pretty and outgoing. And a lot of these men became what they call persons of interests, we might call suspects, very quickly, such as Lee, the floaty work colleague from Bow Repairs. I don't know what Bow Repairs is. I think it might be a tyre company or something like that. But they would have worked with the Campden car yard where she worked. And the night before she died, Rachelle actually had a date with him and they had a little smooch session. But he was completely cooperative with police and apparently his alibi was rock solid. Then there's her ex-boyfriend Shane, who Rachelle had recently finished with, although he and her family were very close. They really liked Shane. Plus, there was no clear motive for Shane to be the culprit. But he was really emotionally impacted after the breakup. So some wondered if jealousy may have played a role. So he was in the picture for a bit, but they quickly ruled him out as well. Then there was the mystery man named Nathan, who Rachelle had been chatting with online. He lived in Queensland. There was no real follow-up to this because he was far away and only recent in her life, and I think his alibi was also solid. But when you listen to the podcast and hear about Bruce, the creepy neighbour, well, he looks a bit more likely. Despite being married with kids, it appeared that Bruce had an unreciprocated interest in Rachelle, and friends had complained many times that Bruce used to show up uninvited to their girls' nights and hang around, or he'd send flowers to her work. And after Rachelle's death, Bruce and his family mysteriously and rapidly moved to Queensland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which looks a little kind of guilty, doesn't it? And family always felt weird around him, but he was later cleared at the coronial inquest. More on that later. Then there was a biker angle, which was one worth looking into because there was a link with the local Rebels gang. Rebels was a biker gang. They're quite a coastal gang, I think, because I know about them from the town where I grew up. And I think they were in it about Canberra as well. I think they were quite prolific around there. But Rachelle had made a friend with a tattooist in the gang who was going to purchase a car through her. And there were lots of rumours of her wanting to go to a party at the clubhouse, which was kind of out of character for her, according to her friends. The podcast also uncovered information that Rachelle had apparently stumbled onto something suspicious at work to do with papers, hinting at some kind of fraud through the company she worked for. Her boss at the car warehouse, a guy called Kevin Carell, was later sacked regarding this information, but he was also in the frame for Rachelle's murder. So if you haven't listened to the podcast, apologies, I've ruined it for you. They really do look at this guy quite heavily. Kevin is 22 years older than Rachelle. Not only is he her boss, but he was also something of a mentor to her. But he had a secret past, Michelle. Mm-hmm. Kevin was allegedly obsessed with her to the point where she would kind of keep her private life very cut off from work. She didn't want him hearing about, other guys she was seeing. She didn't really like it. Well, he didn't really like it when all those flowers would arrive from Bruce, the creepy neighbour. And he would let her borrow rare cars from the lot, but only her. And that raised eyebrows. In fact, right before her death, Rachelle had told friends that Kevin had managed to get his hands on something called a Walkinshaw, which is an iconic Australian muscle car.
It sounds terrible.
I know, it sounds terrible. Apparently it looks like a giant square, like a brick or something.
God.
But
Okay.
anyway, he told her she could borrow it for the weekend, and she was really excited to borrow the car. He told her, don't tell anyone, but of course she couldn't keep it quiet because she was so excited. The podcast also highlights Kevin's behaviour after Rachelle's death as being off. He was distant at her funeral, avoided all eye contact, and rushed any phone calls that he had with the family. So they were completely feeling a bit weird about him. But then there's his history of sexual offences, violent ones at that, under a different name. Yeah. He used to be known as Kevin Cornwall, and under that name, he was linked to multiple disturbing allegations which spanned decades.
Fuck.
But I'll tell you a bit more about that later, because also I wanted to say, on the night of poor Rachelle's murder, there were multiple sightings in the hours surrounding her death. Her car is a vintage dark blue Commodore, and it was seen near the Gerroa burn site by multiple people with its boot open, lights on. Some sightings say the car was on one side of the road, others say it was on the other side of the road, so people saw it shifting back and forth, facing different directions. Some say that the lights were on high beam as they were going past, waiting for it to go down, and they were flashing, but nothing would happen. In a way that's kind of helpful. They couldn't see what was actually going on, like they couldn't read the car number plate or see who was there. Some others said they saw a man with sandy hair standing over someone with dark hair lying on the ground. Now, Rachelle's actually blonde and Kevin's got dark hair. A dairy farmer driving past on his way home in the early hours saw flames from the scrub but didn't stop. And then, of course, Craig Duck, the security guard, discovered her body around 2 a.m. I know you'll ask me about CCTV footage, Michelle, because you always do. And it's the usual story, I'm afraid. Most of it was lost or missing thanks to police stations refurbishing, moving, changing around. Lots of boxes of evidence were sent to the wrong police station. And this was 2001 when things were just going from analog to digital.
Yep.
But police did have CCTV from petrol stations between Camden and Nowra, which is further south down the south coast, with snippets of a woman matching Rachelle's description and later two men in her car.
Oh.
I know. The podcast really hones in on Kevin's dark past and details previous sexual attacks made by a person the victims believe was Kevin Cornwell. And we can't say that it was him because he was never prosecuted for it. Kevin Cornwell, as I said, was Kevin Carell's name until he changed it because of the association to the attacks that he was later cleared of. And also his brother was a prolific violent rapist as well.
Oh my
His
God.
family were pretty odd by all accounts. The podcast host is a lady called Ashley Hansen, and she spoke to the victims of the previous sexual assaults who gave on the podcast harrowing recollections of their attacks. They were all similar in MO and they were all similar alibis for Kevin as well, which is that he'd gone to a takeaway, bought a battered salve, a piece of fish, a bag of chips and a Coke. And eerily, Michelle, this is the very same alibi that he gave when being questioned after Rachelle's death.
Oh, mate, I had a bag of chips and a battered salve.
Battered salve.
Fuck
I
you
know.
know.
What's that about?
Like, get a bit more original, mate.
It's the same thing. It's almost like he's got a glitch in his head or something. It's bizarre.
At least throw a Golden Gay Time and a Chico roll in there or something. Mix it up.
Oh, gosh. Okay, we had a little laugh, but now it's back to serious faces because there were many allegations of sexual assault being levelled at Kevin Cornwell / Carell in the 80s. There was a policeman that actually caught him in the act of attacking a woman in a car park.
What?
Carell stood up to put his hands up and his trousers actually fell down. And this asshole then said she deserved it because she was a mole. I know, it's disgusting.
Oh, my God.
But he was tried and acquitted of 4 sexual assaults. Acquitted.
This is a different era. It's a different time. That's all I can say.
The victims who Ashley Hansen spoke to in the podcast would recall that their court cases were bringing up the worst possible things about their character as they possibly could. It used to be very much a case of victim blaming. Yeah, it was awful.
Shocking.
Painting a different time. There was another weird coincidence, though, Michelle, around the murder, which was another murder of a young woman in Gerroa, 18-year-old mother of 2, Jodie Thesis, who was found in a shallow grave close to where Rachelle's body was found, but that was in 1997, in August. Her murderer was eventually found to be her husband, Stephen, who was only convicted in 2016. So that had been a question mark all throughout the time when Rachelle's body had been found.
Not to be like that, but as we know from this podcast, the husband / boyfriend, it's always...
Well, we know that from your story.
Well, yeah, it's always the first place you look to.
Yeah, they've got to. A coronial inquest, as I mentioned earlier, there was a coronial inquest years later, I think it was 2006, which ruled Rachelle Childs had been deliberately killed, but found there was not enough evidence to identify her murder. So it was an open verdict. Unfortunately, not much joy for her family in that. And at the time, there was only one person left of the original persons of interests / suspects left. Can you guess who that is?
Kevin Carell.
It's Kevin Carell. Ashley Hansen also managed to talk with 2 women who had been in long-term relationships with Kevin Carell or / Cornwall at the time. Fake names, Evelyn and Alice. Both women gave powerful testimonies about Kevin's abusive behaviour. And towards the end of their relation, Evelyn described an occasion where she went to visit him down the coast and he offered her a glass of pink champagne. Evelyn wasn't much of a drinker, so she only had a couple of sips. But then they went for a walk on the beach and she started to feel really unwell, like really unwell. Now, she had seen some behaviour from Kevin up to this point and she was in the midst of breaking up with him. So her parents knew that she was doubtful over his character. She was very careful. She went to the bathroom and made a phone call to her mum, but said, I think he's put something in my drink and somebody needs to get to me now. She's a few hours away from home. But her mum, she came out of the bathroom on the phone loudspeaker or something to her mum. And Kevin was acting very shifty, but he ended up driving her and her young daughter, who was with her, home, thankfully. But not before showing her in his garage his new car, which was a bloody Walkinshaw. She'd never heard of it before, didn't know what it was.
Right. Oh, my God.
Meant nothing to her.
I've never heard of it. I've never heard of bloody Walkinshaw.
No, exactly. Alice, who was the other lady that was in a long-term relationship with him, said Kevin drove her to the exact location of where Rachelle's body was found. And
What?
Evelyn had said that Kevin told her that Rachelle's fingers had been cut off as punishment because that's the bikie signature. Kevin was actually spreading rumours that it was the bikies that had killed her, and that's what they do. They cut her fingers.
Deflection.
Yeah. She didn't mention this while testifying, by the way, at the 2006 inquest because Rachelle's family were there. She didn't want to upset them.
Why the bloody hell not? You've
Well,
got to say these things.
I know, but she did afterwards. She told police, and they immediately exhumed Rachelle's body, and they discovered that one of the fingers had been dismembered.
Oh.
The inquest into Rachelle's death in 2006 had Kevin Carell take to the stand, but he exercised his right not to answer questions on the grounds that the answers might incriminate him. So over and over and over again he answered,
No
I refuse
comment.
to answer those questions on the grounds they may incriminate me. Yeah.
Oh, my God. What a dickhead.
Also appearing on the podcast is investigator Damien Loon, who is the former New South Wales detective sergeant who was involved in the Lynette Dawson case. And he suspected that Rachelle's death could be the work of a serial predator and has theories about the original burial site and the strange rushed disposal, suggesting panic. Yeah, so that's basically where we're at for me so far in this podcast. There will be more, so watch this space. But was it a botched intimidation killing, or was it the result of an escalating obsession? But my big question, Michelle, which I need to say, having told you all the details, is about the podcast itself and these podcasts that dig up cold cases with the help of the family who want their answers, you know. Is it helpful or is it a witch hunt? Eking out the story to get maximum listening figures each week. Like I said, it's currently #1 in the UK charts. But the thing is, you can't deny the impact such a podcast investigation has on these cold cases, which would have normally been forgotten about. Since the podcast started, Rachelle's case has now been reopened, which the family are thrilled about. Her car, which has been on her sister's property since the case was closed back in 2006 or beforehand, has now been seized again so they can do more thorough DNA testing and evidence gathering on the car. And since broadcasting, even more witnesses have come out, such as the landlord of a property where Kevin once lived. After Kevin vacated the property, the landlord says he recalls lifting up carpet in a bedroom wardrobe and finding a secret stash of loads and loads of newspaper articles, all to do with Rachelle's murder.
Right.
But unfortunately, this type of thing, things like telling ex-wives that he would kill them and chop them up into small pieces so they'd never be found, or a conversation that Rachelle and her fire brigade friend had at the car yard, and Kevin got up in that conversation and said, burning a body would be the best way of getting rid of evidence. You know, all of these things, they are circumstantial. They do not prove culpability. So you can't really get him on that.
But look, back to the podcast I was talking about earlier, Bronwyn with Hedley Thomas.
Yes.
Teacher's pet guy who got that result of putting Christopher Dawson in jail. We have to remember that these true crime podcasts, including ours, it's grim subject matter, but it is entertainment. And yes, they do want listening figures, but in these particular cases, especially with Bronwyn, with Rachelle Childs, with Teacher's Pet, without the coverage and scrutiny of these podcasts, I don't think there's any chance that those murders or missing person cases / murders would have got anywhere without the podcasts. Because certainly for this podcast, Bronwyn, where I'm up to, the amount of people who 31 years later have called into the podcast and said, I've been sitting on this information and it's been too long and I can't take this to the grave.
Yeah.
Information that's come out more than the police could ever do, because what they call it now is crowdsolving.
Right.
They're crowdsolving these murders. So, yeah, there's a double-edged sword here. But I think if the family are on board and they can help get some answers to put their minds at rest and maybe even find the remains of their loved ones to finally give them the burial and closure that they deserve, then
yeah, well, there is
go for
that.
it.
And I know that the family of Rachelle Childs is completely behind the podcast. They believe they know who the murderer is and they want to see justice done.
It's the same with Bronwyn. The family are behind the podcast and they believe they know who the murderer is and they are sticking it to him.
If at the very least they get these investigations reopened so they can have another look at things, I think it's worth it.
Me too.
But I do sometimes worry
that it is a witch hunt against these people who might not be guilty.
Exactly.
But they might be.
Because their lives are being ruined if it's not.
Yeah, but when you listen...
Because it's public, and everyone's decided, oh, he definitely did it. Because when I was listening to this podcast, I thought Bruce was definitely the guy. But now I'm obviously being led down the Kevin Carell route.
Well, that's what they want you to believe.
Yeah.
They're directing the narrative and we have to remember that as well.
Exactly.
But really fascinating. Maybe when you finish the podcast, give us an update. And
I'll give an update.
And maybe if I ever finish the 39 bloody episodes of Bronwyn, I can do a recap.
But you know what I think in future, from now on, from here onwards, we're going to have to go light. Light and breezy does it every time.
Yes. And then with that, I think there's only 3 things left to say.
Wherever you are,
whatever you do,
just keep
eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.